Well, hello everyone, welcome back to Single Player Minecraft, where we will be working on the museum, contrary to what I said last episode, except we're not going to be working on the version history section. As we prepared last time around, we went and looked for blocks here and there. Instead of going left, we're going to, well, look at the map because it's very empty, come to think of it, and we're going to turn to the right, and we're going to go down here, and I might have included it in the title, but instead we're going to have a tier list. We're going to do tier lists in Minecraft. It's not really tier lists, it's more top 5 sort of thing. So we've got 5 places here, 5 places here. Gold's obviously first, golds, silver, bronze. I'm going to put a sign there saying 4th place or something. And then we've got the wooden spoon for last. What are we going to be putting in the tier lists? Items. How useful are these items? We've got a slowness potion, a red mushroom, piece of string, piece of glowstone dust. Not quite. These all stand for a certain farm in this world. Farm slash not a farm, but we'll get onto that asterisk in a moment. The point is, these all stand for a certain farm. They're being split into 2 groups. I'll explain what those groups are in a moment. And yeah, we're going to go around and I'm going to name, well, I'm going to count them down basically in each of their 2 sections. Kind of like 2 heats, but they're split into sections, 2 different sections because they're not really compatible. But even then you could argue the 5 in and of themselves aren't compatible. But we're going to compare them anyway. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to tour around the world, look at these 10 farms, and I'm going to do it in order, the countdown. And we shall, yeah, we'll just talk about them. And I will go over why I've put them last or first or in the middle, what I like about them, what I don't like, maybe a bit of the history behind it. Sort of a mini world tour, I guess you could say, except it's only of farms that I've used a lot. Then again, maybe some that I haven't used at all. Alright, there we go, we've got 4th added in there to the tier lists. So building farms is something that I have done a lot of in this world, right from the very beginning up until now. Grindy work that gets farms done is something that I really thrive off of, I really enjoy. Unlike a lot of people who probably aren't so stimulated by it, I am, although we're all different. Part of my love of building farms comes, definitely, without question, comes from watching Etho back in the day before I got the game like in its full version. I played the demo. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I played the demo for many months. I actually think I played the demo prior to finding Etho. I found Etho around late 2011. He was, I think, around about 100 episodes into his LP at that point. But yeah, much of my early time playing this game was watching him, and he was obviously quite into the technical side of things, farms and whatnot, and that's really what I was inspired by, because that was the primary LP I watched, and still is to this day. It's been a constant basically for the last 9 years or so. And so yeah, that's practically what inspired me and kind of shaped my playstyle in this game. And it was kind of strange to me because I remember watching LPs of people who were, you know, gathering resources, they were doing it very diligently and all that sort of stuff, and you would just be thinking, I mean, this is cool and all, but like, you could just build a farm, or you could just do this, or you could just do that sort of thing. You know, I felt there were quicker ways around it, and that's just because I'd had earlier exposure, I guess, to farms than some of the community. And it's only lately, I say lately, maybe, I feel like since around 1.9 and onwards, since then, building farms has definitely become more mainstream. Like, everyone does it, even the most dedicated builders do it now, in order to gather resources for the purpose of building. And so things have changed. The climate has really changed in terms of, the meta. These days, the best farms are found on the first day of a snapshot being released, whereas back in the day, an update might have been out for many, many months before a really good farm was figured out. So yeah, things have definitely changed. I guess that comes with the fact that the game's become more mainstream than it was 9 years ago. 9 years ago it was still fairly primitive. All that to say, I've very much always been into farms, and this is definitely my favourite / best Minecraft world. Certainly single player world, because I've accomplished a lot, built a lot, but also I've actually built stuff myself without without guides. I've built stuff with guides, obviously. I think that's a key part of the game. You see even LPers do it now. I mean, I think LPers did it anyway back in the day, but like these days you see a lot more LPers. They just want a quick farm. They'll go on YouTube and find something from SciCraft or wherever, and they'll use it. So I would say guides are definitely an important part of the game. If you can build something yourself, go for it, but like there's no shame in taking someone else's design, not taking it, you know, not stealing it, not being like, hey, this is my design, but like, you know, using it. What the heck? These Endermen. So there's the preface over with. I've built a lot of farms. We're going to be ranking them today, and I will now reveal the two categories. I won't be showing the items off anymore, but the two categories will be farms related to mobs and farms are not related to mobs. I say farms not related to mobs / non-farms, but again, we'll get to that. We're going to do mob farms first though. As I said, I'm going to tour around. We'll start from... should we do a random order? Like tier, because tier lists you don't really do 5 to 1 or 1 to 5. You always go in a random order. Yeah, let's do a random order. And so we're starting our countdown with a relatively recent farm. This is of course the mob farms we're doing. First of all, you might recognise this from previous episodes. This is the wither farm, the automatic wither farm. Now this is some of the farms in this list, or in these lists, are my design. I would claim a fair bit of credit for. This one, no credit really. I did make one change that is pretty obvious, but basically this farm, I can't remember who came up with it in the first place. Only wither spawn on wither roses, and we've got this massive perimeter dug out, which means if we're stood at a certain point, only withers will spawn. They all fall down because they run away from the dogs. They're attracted to these guys. They want to fight them, but they don't reach them and they fall, and they're finished off by dogs down there. There is actually... is that a pigman? That's a pigman wearing a wither skeleton skull. That is funny. I'm so glad I came down here now. That is really, really funny. I've never seen that before. I don't think I could do that again if I tried. Look at how it doesn't fit. I said pigmen. I know they're called zombified piglins, but it'll take a bit of getting used to. Anyway, what's good about this farm and what's bad about this farm? Now, honestly, you may think I've done a disservice to this farm in where I've put it, and I probably have. Some would say this is the greatest farm ever because what do you get from it? Wither skeleton skulls. What's one of the worst items to collect in this game? That's right, wither skeleton skulls. I know a lot of people really don't like how they work, what it takes to obtain them. It's a random chance, and of course you could be here for hours and hours and hours on end and have no luck, like in a vanilla fortress. But with this farm, it's great. You get loads and loads of skulls with in very little time AFKing. That's the good thing about it. In fact, I would argue that's the only good thing about it. What are the bad things? First of all, it does take a while to build. It took me, what was it, about a month or it was like 3 months. Not 3 months straight of work, but over a 3-month period I dug out this entire perimeter. It wasn't even that difficult. Like, the area did require a huge amount of digging out, but it was still on a scale that was, you know, it took a bit of time, and so that's why this farm isn't quite as good as you might first think. It does require a lot of work. If you found a fortress in a reasonably large ocean area, a lava ocean with very little bedrock or very little netherrack in the ceiling, you might be okay, and it will obviously take less work. This is in a decent location actually. It's in a fairly sizable ocean, so this was as good as it was going to get for me. I'm not even sure if the massive lava oceans even still exist with the nether changes, but anyway, that's one of the negatives. Basically, the items are, like, they're okay. Wither skeleton skulls, obviously, they're great. Everyone wants them at some point or another, to get beacons, to get nether stars, to fight the wither, etc, etc. But once you've got a lot, they're really not all that useful. You know, you're not going to put up loads and loads and loads of beacons, because you need a maximum of like 6 beacons or something, maybe even 5 to get all the effects. You could use it for decoration, fair enough, but you're probably not wanting to put too many beacons down. You can't find loads and loads of, or you can't fight, sorry, loads and loads of withers all at once. I've already tried 100 withers. Then again, that maybe says more about my computer than anything else. Maybe with the newest technology, you could get away with fighting more. So the point is, once you have a lot of wither skulls, there's basically no use for them. I don't even think I've got any. Okay, I've got 4. Several stacks of wither skulls, you're fine. You don't need any more, and that basically obsoletes this farm. What else do you get? You get loads and loads of bones. Bones are great, except there's better ways of getting bones, or more efficient ways of getting bones, or less time-consuming ways of getting bones. I look at, like, I filled this up and I've not even emptied this. I'll probably never empty this farm of bones. You also get coal. Of course, this is another drop from wither skeletons, which is good. You can trade them with villagers, so that's a positive. But at the same time, there are other ways of getting coal. Well, mining and whatnot. I mean, it's not the most difficult item to find in mines. The drops from this farm aren't game-changing. Not everyone does villager trading, which limits the coal. There's better ways of lighting in the game these days. Bones, as I said, better ways. And once you have just a few stacks of wither skulls, you're sorted. For the reason it takes a lot of work to set up, given the fact I've lived, breathed, and suffered that process, and because of the limitation regarding the drops, I'm actually going to put this at 4th place, honestly. 2nd from bottom. I know it's crazy. A farm that is almost everyone's dream. If you could snap your fingers and it appeared, that would be great. If it required a lot less work, then fair enough. But yeah, I'm not putting this any higher than 4th, honestly. There is actually a reason it's 4th, and I'll speak about that later in the list if I remember. I should also say this is where you AFK if you don't know, but if you've watched any of my recent episodes, I'm sure you do know that, as I've been here a wee bit. It also lags quite a bit, but I mean that's probably due by and large to my system again. Also, you do get stone swords, which are probably the most useless like mob drop in terms of armor or weapons, because you can't smelt it down for nuggets, and you're not really going to use a stone sword. So there's that as well. You've got to build a system to get rid of them. Alright, that's farm number 1. Or not number 1, farm number 4. Mob farm number 4. I'm going to have to speed things up so this doesn't take forever. So I should probably have prefaced this video by saying this is of course all subjective. That means it's entirely my opinion, and the comments section is not disabled. Feel free to tell me what I've got wrong. Feel free to tell me why you disagree so vigorously with me. Of course, this tier list will definitely carry some bias because A, I've played in this world, B, I've built these farms, and some of these farms I will have used a lot more than others. And I will be honest, when creating the tier lists, I was very much aware that time bias does play a part in how I rank these farms. For example, that wither farm I've only built recently and it came at 4th. Had I built that a few years ago and used it a lot more, maybe it would have come higher, who knows. And in fact, some of the reasons I gave for putting the wither farm at 4th I actually use as a positive for other farms. So that's why the comments are there for you to tell me where my discrepancies are. Anyway, moving on. We are going to be talking about this farm. This is a classic farm. This is a really, really old mob farm. One of the oldest farms in my world, without a shadow of a doubt. And the design itself is one of the oldest mob farms in the game. I originally got this from Etho. He built it around the 2010-2011 time of the game's life cycle. And I've built not thousands of these obviously, but the point is I built this design a lot. Built it this world, and I'm still using it to this very day. Better designs have come out. Far, far better designs have come out. But I've just stuck with it. I built it at the beginning, and I haven't seen a reason to change it. It is just a mob farm, standard mob farm. You get creepers, zombies, skeletons, spiders. You can disable spiders, there is a way. I've not done that. I've wanted the spiders, I've wanted the string. You don't get as much string. It's still a useful item to have. You also get witches, but witches are really weird in terms of how they're killed in these sort of contraptions. This farm has gone through changes, and it's actually, I would argue, it's got better over time, because after the 1.13 update came out, the original way the mobs were killed, which was via swimming in water and drowning in lava, didn't work anymore because they didn't swim, they just sunk. So I had to have a kind of fall trap for them, and there's basically, well, they die fall damage or magma blocks down there. Spiders are a little different. Instead they, well, as you can see, zombie pushes spider, spider falls. Well, sometimes they fall down, sometimes they get trapped up there. They kind of climb up and end up in the water and they drown. And that's arguably a better way to kill the spiders than the old system. with the lava, because sometimes they would swim in lava and their drops would burn up and we wouldn't get them. You do get a lot from this. Look at that, the bones are almost full. And I actually only emptied that recently. Now back in the day, one of the main reasons for building this farm was gunpowder. Because every other classic mob I should say, had their own spawner. Zombies, spiders, and skeletons. They all had a spawner, so you can make spawner farms no problem. Creepers did not. This was before witches were in the game, I should say. But you do get some witch drops, just not nearly as much as the other ones. The creepers were the main reason, arguably, you would build this farm, but the other drops were very, very useful too. I'm trying to think, what's the least useful drop? Let's disregard the witch drops, given the fact we've got a witch farm. But what's the most useful? And also there's slime, but that's sort of a different farm, sort of the same one. We're not going to be dealing with a slime farm, we're just dealing with these drops. Because the thing is, bones, I know I kind of disregarded them for the wither farm, but the wither farm was difficult to make. So you would get very little for a lot of effort. This is little effort and you get a lot. So bones are useful, you know, taming dogs, bone meal, bone blocks. Zombie flesh, you can trade it off these days, which is good. And it's kind of useful as a junk item for filters. I used zombie flesh as a junk item for the hopper sorter thing back there. Arrows are obviously useful for bows and crossbows, gunpowder, TNT, potions, and fire charges and fireworks, string, wool, bows, tripwire. So there's really not a bad item in this. There really isn't a bad item. It's a very useful early game farm because you can obviously dig it out when you've got very little resources. It's not that big. It's, what was it, 30 by 30 blocks? Instantly gives you a lot of stone. You can dig out with a stone pickaxe easily. It does take a wee while, but not too long. You don't spend months on it. It's not that sort of a farm. So there's lots and lots that's good about this. Is there anything that's bad about it? Well, it's not that fast. If you want a lot of items really, really quickly, it's not that good. Because you do have to wait around for a wee while. You do have to light up all the caves around. So that there's an added kind of extra task that I've kind of missed out. But, I mean, if you build this at the start of your world, similar to what I did, you can just go and light up the caves, no problem, as you expand and explore. So although it's a wee bit of a difficulty, it's not that bad. Spiders, getting stuck in the system is sort of one. Obviously it relies on the mob's pathfinding, which is why it slows down, so that kind of ties in with the other negative. There are a few negatives, but if you build this in an area of the world you're going to be you will be well rewarded with a lot of items throughout the duration of your world's life. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say this is going to be placed at number 1. This farm is the best mob farm that I have in this world. Always has been. I have no doubts about it whatsoever. If you have a look at some of the other farms in this, you will not question that decision. There are probably better spawner farms you can make to get these items. There are better alternate farms you can maybe get, or maybe make, to get these items. In this world, for a quick and easy starter farm, and the fact it's lasted a long time and has supplied me with a lot of materials, a lot of items, number 1 without a shadow of a doubt. Alright, here's somewhere I've not been for a while. This is the automatic blaze farm. Now this is something that I have, or I did work on a lot back in the day. I don't know how to describe it. It was like it was my project, if you like. I spent ages and ages trying to build something like this, and eventually I got it working. I'm not even sure if we'll be able to test it because you do have to use it a certain way. We'll go up there in a minute, but this is an automatic blaze farm. As I said, I had a lot of failed attempts at building this, but I finally got something that was semi-useful. So what's good about this farm, what's not so good? Good thing is, it's AFK. I mean, I've heard that some people aren't a huge fan of being AFK and using farms, that's fine, but for those that are, works great. You get loads of XP from it. You also get blaze rods. Blaze rods are good in my opinion. I think they're underrated. You can use them as fuel in furnaces. Obviously they're good for potions. Do you craft the ends rods out of them? I think you might. The point is, blaze rods are very useful to have. They're not a game-changing item by any stretch of the imagination, but they're very, very, very useful, especially if you've got them in bulk. The downside is, let's actually turn down the hostile creatures, because these guys are loud. One of the downsides is you do need instant damage potions for it to work. So you do need a good, like, smelting system. they go all the way up here. I don't know how many chests there are, but there's quite a lot. I reckon I could be AFK for a good number of hours, maybe even days, and I wouldn't run out. But that's one of the downsides. It's not the hardest thing to obtain, and it does give you a use for potions, and potions are there to be used, but obviously, well, there are better designs, like ones that use wolves and whatnot. Yeah, to give you an idea of how it works, basically, let's go back in. Bunch of blaze collect on that iron pressure plate there. Once there's a certain number, they trigger a crusher. Crusher takes them down to 1 hit. Once the crusher retracts, an instant damage potion is dropped to the player, and if you've got the right click held down and aimed properly, so it needs to be aimed, I think you can pretty much aim anywhere. You'll throw the potion. If you've got your right click held down, it'll kill the blaze. The XP should come towards you and you'll get the blaze rods. And if you're holding the looting sword, I think you get more. That used to work. I'm sure it still does. So one of the difficulties with building it, well, there was a few difficulties. One was you had to have the player in a certain position where they would activate the spawner. You couldn't be too far away or you wouldn't activate the spawner. You had to get the blaze far enough away from the spawner so that more would spawn, because if they were too close to the spawner, the spawning cap would be reached. I think it's like 6 or 7, and you could build up a large amount of blaze. The player also had to be stood far enough away. If the player was too close, then the damage potion when thrown would injure the player as well, and that would cause the player to lose hunger. And you don't want that in an AFK farm. You want it to be smooth, no hunger loss, no health loss, no running around sort of thing. You want still movements to save hunger, and damaging the player is not a way to do that. So we've got a pretty good position here. The player also had to be stood close enough to the killing area in order to collect the XP, but I'll speak more about that in a moment. And I should say, this farm, should I rate it now? I might as well rate it now. Basically, I'm going to put it in 3rd place. The reason I put it above the Wither farm is I built this, I don't want to say I designed this entirely. I designed this based off of other Blaze farm designs and things like that, but it was by and large put together by myself. So I do want to claim a good chunk of credit for it. Also, as I said, in my opinion, blaze rods are criminally underrated in this game. And yes, it gives you XP as well, which I guess these days there's a lot more AFK XP farms, like the gold farms. They're AFK, except for my one, because my one's bad. Yeah, there's not many XP farms actually. AFK XP farms, I should say. So this is one of a kind fish farms. I guess they count as AFK XP farms, although that's not the main reason. Solid 3rd place for this, which means we've only got 2nd and 5th place left. The wooden spoon yet to be announced. This better be worth it, because I've been waiting here a long time for this to activate. I don't remember how many it was actually. We're at 44. I feel like it was 60. Oh, here we go. Finally. As you can see, the crusher is active. Some of them die, so that's another negative. Also, the fact it takes so long, another negative. But as you saw there, I did have my right click held down. Well, that's another thing. The player had to be close enough to the blaze killing area to get the XP. So not only did you have to be far enough away that the player wouldn't get damaged, but you had to be close enough to attract the XP towards you. So it was very, very difficult to make. It took me many attempts, and I actually have a failed double blaze farm somewhere in this world that lives as proof of the difficulties I had. AFK Blaze Farm, designed by yours truly, sort of, is going at number 3. Alright, next on our tour of the farms is a spider farm. No, I'm just kidding. It's a witch farm. Although that's one of its flaws that we can speak about instantly, is spiders tended to spawn in it. I can't remember why. I think it's because they could spawn on top of the pistons, and the pistons are slightly outside the area. Because they're only 1 high, obviously other mobs, tall mobs, can't spawn there, but spiders could. So yeah, slight negative. Other than that, there's nothing that special about it. I don't think they're done as often these days as they used to be. I mean, what are the farms that everyone does? Everyone does iron farms. Those are the main farms. Villager farms are pretty big these days, partly because of the recent updates. Witch farms used to be a lot bigger than they are now. But I think it's always useful to have one. Let's go down the elevator that I just came up, and we'll have a look at the drops. Well, we kind of already saw them when we looked at the old mob farm. But we've got glass bottles, we've got glowstone dust, gunpowder, redstone, spider eyes, sticks, and sugar. For the drops alone, this is going at number 2. Okay, I think that's pretty obvious. There's no way this is going at number 5. Number 2. Which farm is number 2? Every single item, well, most items in this are useful. For example, redstone goes without saying. Everyone needs redstone once in a while. What else? Let's skip over the spider eyes. Sticks. You do get a lot of sticks, but you can't trade them away these days with villagers. Plus, they're useful in crafting if you need a few extra. Gunpowder, TNT need I say more, as well as all the other reasons stated earlier. Glowstone means you don't have to go hunting in the nether. Glass bottles are useful too, although you do get quite a lot. I guess you do get quite a lot of excess items in terms of gunpowder, spider eyes, and sugar. These are probably the 3 least useful items. You could, in theory, turn them into, give them a use. Sugar you can do a lot more than just potions with. And spider eyes, similarly, I guess potions is the main one. Fermented spider eyes, that's sort of something that's very important for them. Hey look, villagers. The point is, it's a farm that falls into the category of useful to have. If you ever need these items, it is very useful to have. Oh yeah, some other mobs do actually spawn here, but not so many that it makes a huge difference. But yeah, those are the drops. This is a rubbish elevator that sometimes decides not to work. As I said, the pros definitely outweigh the cons of the spiders. It is a wee bit slow, and you do have to light up the area. Would I have swapped this with number 1 if I'd built... Because that's the thing, this is in an area that I haven't spent an awful lot of time. I mean, I have to an extent. Here's the thing, there was a time when I was thinking of not moving over here permanently, but spending more time over here because I was building more farms, better farms, and my villager kind of area here, villager breeder, whatnot. Interestingly enough, we're nowhere near a village. These villagers came from an old zombie dungeon down here when villager zombies spawned from them. But the point is, I was planning to spend a lot more time around here. This would have probably become just as useful as the old mob farm because I would have had these chunks loaded a lot more. Would that have bumped up to number 1 had I done that, or if my main base had been here as opposed to where the old mob farm is? I mean, here's the thing, I would have built a mob farm here anyway, so I would have been able to toggle the two, turn one off, turn one on, sort of thing. So I think the placings are fair. The placings are fair in terms of how they relate to this world and how much of an impact they've had on this series, even though that's not really been shown in episodes. I think that's fair. Number 2, second place, definitely fair. Well, one farm had to come last, didn't it? And it's this one. Quintuple spawner farm. 4 cave spider spawners, 1 skeleton spawner. I think it's justified. I think it's well and truly justified. Then again, I have been using it a lot lately, so maybe not. The reason this comes last is because, well, for starters, it's not even a quintuple spawner farm because you can't activate all 5 spawners from the one area. You can't even activate these 2 from the one area, we figured out. So that's a drawback to it. Second thing is you can't even get all the possible items. For example, skeletons drop armor and bows. Spiders could drop spider eyes. You can't even get them from this design because they die of natural causes, and so you only get the base items. I guess technically it's not out of the question for a lot of seeds to have 4 cave spider spawners in the one area, that they can all be active, and maybe at a push have another spawner off it, because you do find a lot of other spawners in mine shafts. But the point is, people are very unlikely to find them, maybe even more unlikely to make a farm out of them. You can't really make a good XP farm with cave spiders because they climb all over the place, they can fit through 1-high blocks, even half slabs you can get past, so you are very limited in terms of what farms you can make with these, which is why I deemed this was the best option. And as I said, it did provide me with a lot of string, which is what I was after for a previous project. I mean, it's a nice design, I think, and it's by and large my own design, albeit using concepts that aren't overly technical or difficult, or, most people could come up with this design, I reckon. It's a bit of a tragic tale when you realise that it doesn't fulfil its full potential. Can I even stand in one area and not activate them all? Yeah, look at this, I'm standing in the middle of 5 spawners, none of them are active. So yeah, unfortunately this farm gets a wooden spoon for the mob farms. It wasn't a difficult one, to be honest. This was the easiest choice, I think, for the entire video. This coming 5th, easiest choice by far. And so there you have it, folks, for my mob farm tier list. We've got the old mob farm. I don't know what else to call it. The old mob farm, followed by the witch farm, then the AFK blaze farm, then the wither farm, and finally we've got the quintuple spider farm. Unfortunately, somebody had to come last, and it just so happened it was a farm that I built earlier. And now we're going to move on to non-mob farms, and we're going to rank them in order of, I don't want to say best to worst, in order of my favourite to my least favourite maybe, or my most memorable to my least memorable, or most useful to least useful, something like that. And to start off with, we are back at this area here, the farming district of my world that's, I guess, slightly underpopulated in terms of farms. There's only 4 farms. I say only 5 farms. 6 farms. You could argue there's about 7 farms here, so farming district, we'll go with that. But the farm that we're talking about is actually these two. We're doing both of them because they're both pretty much the same. They just give different items. This is a melon farm, watermelon farm, melon slice farm, whatever you want to call it. This one, in contrast, you can probably tell by the colour, is a pumpkin farm. It's not full actually, but we do have quite a bit. Does it even work anymore? Oh yeah, it does still work. Yeah, so this is the farm we're speaking about. Of course, the only items we get from them are pumpkins, melons. Are there any pros? Are there any cons? Well, here's the thing. This is a farm that was designed by Zedger and myself. We were playing on it was called the Pocket SMP. It was an SMP from about 4 years ago now. We wanted to build... I don't remember why we wanted to build a pumpkin farm, but we were trying to design it ourselves. I remember we sat in a creative world for many hours and eventually came up with this design, and then we got the materials for it, and we actually then went and built it in the SMP. We did it all in one night. It took many, many hours. And I think the biggest achievement of that was it was like 1.9 or 1.10. It was before shulker boxes, so we literally had to carry everything in our inventories. I'm sure we had our ender chests or whatever with us. I don't remember, but we had to carry everything on us, and we never had to go down once. We carried everything on us, and we managed to build it all the way up to close to the world title. I think it was like 240 or something like that. But it was a lot of fun to build, and the fact that we designed it obviously adds a bit of gloss to it compared with copying someone else's design. The farm does have... It's got 1 or 2 drawbacks. For example, when Zedger and I built our version of the farm, there were twice as many areas where pumpkins could spawn. I've built this farm actually 3 times. I once built it on the Cake Core factions. It was that server back in like 2018 or 2019, I don't remember the year. When I built it there, I figured out that the farm that Zedger and I designed no longer worked, and we had to like miss a space every time we added a new layer. So that sort of took away from the productivity of the farm, although I don't think it actually did in hindsight, because the way we had it, half the pistons were extended, which meant they blocked out half the spawning space and half were retracted. And the way it works is these farms are all running on a hopper clock, and the original design was once the hopper clock switched, the pistons would change, so then the other ones would be the other ones would be extended, the other ones would be retracted. So I don't actually think this is any less efficient. Maybe it's just a wee bit more annoying, I don't know. This one is designed slightly differently because we want the pistons retracted at all possible times. So we've got a pulse limiter here, or whatever this is, a monostaple circuit. And that causes the pulse, but also it means the pistons remain retracted at all times. Same for this one, albeit this is basically just a carbon copy of this one with melon stalks, so it's not really any different. Not all pumpkins end up in the collection area, unfortunately. Some do get lost, I believe. But, I mean, that's just the nature of it. We do get most of the drops, which is good. And, of course, you need pumpkins for things like jack-o'-lanterns. You can trade them as well. Melons. I believe melons are actually a popular building block. And, of course, we've got a lot more in these chests just because you have to actually craft the block from the produce. And you can trade melons with villagers too, I believe. Farmer villagers. Where's my bed? There's my bed. For that reason... And for, I guess, primarily the reason that Zedger and I designed this is going at number 2 on the list. Theoretically, it could easily make number 1. The problem with this list is that from numbers 1 to 5, it's not really fair because they're all good farms, and you could easily make an argument for one going above the other, but this is in order of practically how useful they've been in my world, how much do I like them, that sort of a thing. How much they've affected the series, I guess. And I built these relatively recently, like within the last year or two, even though there's a longer history behind them, but I think number 2 is fair for the impact it's had in my world. Objectively, I think it's a pretty good farm. So the next farm we're going to be looking at is the Cactus Farm. And I'm just kidding. I've not included this, mainly because it's one of the easiest farms in this game to make. I'm not going to say everyone does it, because not everyone does it, but if everyone wanted to do it, everyone could. Now the thing is, this farm that I'm about to speak about, and one that I'm going to speak about later, you could compare in terms of effort and usage and the usefulness of items, because let's be honest, cactus, they're cool, but they're not the most useful items and not the most game-changing items. If you wanted a cactus or a bunch of cactus, just go to a desert and collect a bunch. In terms of all that, you could argue that this farm and the other one I'm going to speak about in a bit are on the same level, and they shouldn't get mentioned, but these ones did require a wee bit of imagination and effort and skill. First one we're going to be speaking about is the mushroom farm. How many of you knew I had a mushroom farm? Well, if there's only one person watching, then probably you. But yes, no, I do have a mushroom farm. Is it broken? That's bizarre. That's typical. I come down to rave about it in a tier list video, and it's for whatever reason not working. Alright, I should have sorted out all of those buckets. They should all be retracted now. That's very weird, so it's clearly run into a bug or something. I can't quite explain it. The reason I've got this on my list is because it's one of the technical farms I have in this world that, I mean, I did take it from someone. I don't remember who. It was a very old YouTube video. But this farm has been around for a very long time in my world. It was one of the earliest things I built. You can tell because it's at the bottom of this well. And the reason I've got it in this list, and I will tell you where I've put it. I've put it at number 3. Which means ultimately it's only one place behind the pumpkin and melon farms. But it's useful to have. That's the reason it's so high. It's so simple and yet so useful to have. It requires early game stuff in terms of dispensers. Okay, it requires a fair amount of redstone. I'm not going to deny that. But if you can get the redstone, the dispensers, the string and all that, it's very, very, very useful. And the best thing about it is you just leave it and forget about it. It is AFK, but I've got it in like the hub of my world, the place I spend the most time, and therefore, literally, if ever I need mushrooms, I just come down here and there's mushrooms. I've got excess, so if I need excess, I've got excess. It's fantastic. I guess one of the negatives is, with mushrooms, you kind of want the blocks, like if you're a builder, or can you smelt the mushroom blocks? I think you can, like use them as fuel in furnaces. So if you want that, this is obviously not the farm for you, but if you just want the blocks like that, from which you can grow the mushrooms, the taller mushrooms, to get the blocks, crack on, because it's pretty good. It relies on the day-night cycle, and as long as it doesn't glitch out like it just did there, it works fine. So that's why it's at number 3. Very useful. Leave it and it just runs, and hey presto, you got yourself a bunch of mushrooms. Okay, so the third farm we're looking at isn't really a farm. Well, it sort of is, but not really. It's the Brewing Farm / brewing area. Here's the thing, I could have put other farms in this category, like the Iron Farm, but the thing is, Iron Farms are they're used widespread that it's not really unique, if you like. I mean, none of these farms are unique, let's be honest. The point is, I had to find a farm that wasn't just manual picking and planting. This is something that I kind of want to show off in greater detail, and this was a good time to do it. So we're calling it the Brewing Farm. Now, unfortunately, it's a farm that does require other items to work. You need a lot of items. It will be ranked accordingly to the fact it's not an actual farm, and the fact you do need to, you know, top it up with items. There's not even any items in there. Glistering melons. Oh, they're all in there. Magma cream, gas tears, blaze powder, sugar and spice and all things nice. What's that? There's nothing in that one? Oh, rabbit feet. That's why. I don't think I've killed a rabbit in this world. As you can see, they're not even easy to access, these chests. I should have put them somewhere else. Another reason this is included in the list is because I did design this myself. Using, obviously, redstone concepts I'd seen in videos. I guess to sum it up, RS Norlatches. There you go. I've summed up the farm in one redstone phrase. One word. RS door latches. Is that 2 words? Whatever. One redstone concept, I've summed up this farm. It just runs entirely on RS door latches. You press a button down there, I'll show you the buttons in a minute, and then one of these blocks will come up depending on which button you pressed. Then there's a circuit. The circuit reads the dispenser, or sorry, the hopper next to the brewing stand. Decide if there's no item in it, it'll reset the cycle. If there is an item in it, nothing happens. It just remains stationary like that. And then when the cycle is reset, a pulse occurs, and if one of the RS door latches is active and one of these blocks is up, the same items in the same order will be sent to the brewing stand. So, in theory, it's a lot of simple redstone spread over a massive area in a very messy way. I'll give you a look at the interface. As you can see, here's all the buttons. They're linked to a potion, and then obviously the button will then activate the necessary ingredients. It's got the extra ingredients here. Slowness requires sugar and the inverted ingredient, fermented spider eye, that's the name. So you don't have to pick out the ingredients, you can just press the button and you'll get that potion. Yeah, this comparator here is very important because it reads the hopper here, and if there's no items there, it knows to reset the cycle. And I don't remember, like, I'm not even kidding, I do not remember how I got the bottles out of there in the end. It was probably something to do with this. Yeah, I've tried to make brewing systems since this one, and I failed miserably. This still remains the only fully automated brewing system I have made in this game. Automatic Brewing Farm, in mega quotation marks, is going to come at number 4. It's second bottom. Potions are useful, but they're not that useful. If you wanted an individual potion, you could come here and just get it en masse, which is great. But as I said, it does require ingredients to remain functioning. The ingredients aren't even easy to add. It took a while to build. It wasn't even the... it's not even something, as I said, I've used a lot. But the reason it's at number 4 is because I designed it entirely myself. And it took a while to build. So, there you go. That's a bit biasy for you there, but I think it's justified. Okay, if you've watched the video up to this point and you know what's at stake, you'll understand that you might facepalm at this, but you'll understand that there's a first place and a 5th place to decide in our non-mob farm category. You could easily make the case to put 5th place in 1st place and 1st place in 5th place. You could easily do that. But again, keep in mind that it's not objective about which farm is best, which farm produces the most items. But in terms of this world, it's all about sentimentality and how useful they've been to the series and that. And that's kind of why number 1, which I'm about to show you, is a very strange choice. Ladies and gentlemen, in number 1, we have the world's greatest squid farm. It's not actually the world's greatest squid farm. You can make better designs. In fact, those old desert designs, I'm pretty sure, I don't think they work anymore. Why is it at number 1? There's a few reasons. 1, low effort. I've had this farm from the I don't want to say the very beginning, but I feel like it's from the very early days. Probably within the first 50 episodes, which was within the first 50 days of having this world. Think about it. I've had this world 5 years, and within the first 50 days, I had a squid farm. And what that meant was I never had to worry about ink sac ever again. You know, whenever I was on an SCP and I needed black dye, I had to go and look for squid in the oceans. I had to go and kill them. It was annoying and they didn't always spawn. But here, yeah, you just go and get it. I like the irony. Oh yeah, I've got an ink sac farm. I've got a squid farm. Nope, just loads and loads of salmon. That's obviously a change that's come with the new update, which arguably isn't a bad thing because it's a good supply of food. You also get bones, bone meal, things like that. That's unrelated, don't worry about it. But back in the day, before the 1.13 update, this was primarily or exclusively an ink sac farm. And similar to the mushroom farm that I spoke about earlier, you just left it and it ran itself and that was it. You just went and collected ink sac whenever you needed it, which was great for black dye. Obviously you could use it for book and quill and all that, but primarily black dye. It's number 1 because it was a bit of a master stroke. Did I pick this seed specifically to build this farm here? No. Did I ever anticipate I would build a farm like this? No. I'm pretty sure, from memory, the reason I built this was simply because I kept seeing a load of squid spawn here and I thought, well, what happens if we... Because this is how it works. There's a downward flowing water probably below this point. Now there was, like, I started this world in 1.7. First like 80 episodes are 1.7. Squid could only swim down in 1.7. They can now swim up, which has limited its, how useful it is. Hey, there we go. Yeah, so changes to Squid AI have limited it slightly. But even still, the downward flowing water can still catch squid in it. They will fall like that chap there, and that's ultimately how it works. We've got signs, we've got lighting. It looks like an actual river. I didn't have to manipulate the terrain or anything. I just had to dig down a number of blocks, and it was there. It got materials. If you need early game materials, that's good. You can get them from there. I don't really know why the squid spawn rates are so high here. I'm guessing it's because there's not really any other water areas close by that they can spawn in. I mean, okay, the river's fairly long, but there's no like oceans, and we're not living near an ocean. This wouldn't work in an ocean. I'm not even sure if squid spawning is related to like what ocean they're in, what biome. I know it's related to what Y level. Like this wouldn't work up a mountain, for example, or down in a cave. It can only work between like 63 and 50 something. I've not seen anyone else do a farm like this. Maybe that's another reason why it should be number one, is because the farm itself is so unique. I mean, I have seen ink sac farms. I guess part of the reason I've not seen a farm like this is because ink sac's not the most useful item, but you know what I mean. Oh yeah, I guess you can get black dye now from wither roses. Yeah, okay. So wither rose farms are probably slightly easier to make. Well, slightly easier, slightly harder. 6.5, I would say. 6.5, especially if you've got a good area of river like I have. I guess the one problem is it's kind of slow, but the farm's built on the basis that you're not going to need it instantly, and you'll only need it further down the line. There you go, there's number one for you. Well, there had to be another farm qualifying for the wooden spoon, and unfortunately, it is this one. There's not really a good reason for putting this at number 5. As I said, when I did my very first farm in this category, all of these farms you could easily make an argument for in terms of placing them above another. This one I've put at number 5. Not because the drops are bad. I mean, sugarcane, very useful. Books, trading, sugar, paper, very useful. Farm itself was... I remember it being very frustrating to build. Very annoying. Well, that was pretty cool. Seeing it in action there. Also, you do lose some drops. We might be able to see that here, maybe. Maybe not. I feel like at one point in the game's life cycle you did lose a lot of drops there, although maybe that's no longer the case. So maybe its efficiency is slightly less. You can trade the sugarcane in the form of paper and books and things like that, so I mean it's good from that point of view, but I don't know. I can't remember if I designed it. I don't think I designed it myself. If I did design it myself, it's not what I'm proud of because it's not that difficult to figure out. I think it's probably one of these ones I took the design and then adapted it. I'm pretty sure that's how it happens. It's a very good farm, but even now as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking I should have put it a lot higher, but again, it's about how it's affected the series, and it hasn't really affected the series. I kind of just built it and then left. I haven't really used it. Even with the wither farm, for crying out loud, I've actually used that. I used pretty much every single wither skull I got in that, albeit for other reasons than spawning withers, but that's by the by. Yeah, I'm very sorry, but this farm is going in the wooden spoon slot. Again, you could argue no fault of its own, but it's probably more due to its location, because the other farms I ranked higher were in a better location to be used more. This would easily be higher up if it was in, if it was built at base back at spawn, but it's not, which is why it's slightly lower, a lot lower. It's why it's last. And that brings an end to a video that I thought was going to last a lot shorter than it has. I spent a long time talking about some of these farms, but we've got both tier lists done, and we've got them added to the museum. Can now get rid of this farm. It's been pretty enjoyable, I guess, to look back on some of the key builds in this world, some builds I spent a lot of time on. Again, that's part of the reason why I included the Brewing Farm in this list, is because it did take a while, and it was a pretty big deal for me for a long time in this world. It's probably a good time to announce that I will be doing a world tour at episode 299. Not 300. I will be doing it at 299. Part of the reason I did this video was because I wanted to speak in depth about these farms. There's a good mix in there, I feel, a good mix of farms, and there's not too many mainstream farms in there, which is nice. But as I said, I wanted to speak about them in depth. I probably won't show them off in the world tour. If I do, it'll just be a casual, hey, I built this sort of thing. That's part of the reason why I've done this video now. But episode 299, we're doing a world tour. Episode 298, well, hold on to your hats. We're going to finish the version history of the museum. Prepare for that. But thank you very much for watching this episode, folks. Pleasure to have your company. I'll see you when I see you.